family station. It is now time for the morning watch.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you are overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the main and second watches, the real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica. For our social media question, we ask, what is the real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica? Share your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes too. 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your comments later on in the program, but first, here's I quote.
Dog no hole if him have bone. Once more, dog no hole if him have bone.
Interpret that for us, Victor. Interpret that for us, please, sir.
I'm of the view that this means that a dog doesn't cry out or bark in a howling way, crying for something if he has it. So the only time you hear a dog howling out or crying out for something is if he doesn't have it.
Okay, and well, an explanation in English though.
To my mind, I would say for people, because I mean, I'm sure this parable is not speaking solely of dogs. It's to be an allegory regarding human beings, regarding people. So let's say if you have something as a person, you won't necessarily be crying out for it or longing for it or pining for it or reaching out for it. But if you don't have it, that's when you often find that people, cry out and pine and long after stuff that they don't have.
Okay, sir, I asked for an explanation. We got a little class in literature. Thank you, Victor. We got a class in literature. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
I've got love in my heart and I'm feeling blessed.
Get ready for another exciting World of Worship Wednesday inside Alive, 1 to 5 August 24. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock. More prayer, more power. 2:15, we feature Dr. Jermaine Gordon as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m. inside Community Conversations, we explore the parish of Trelawney. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. with me, your host, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
Have you subscribed to Love 101 FM's YouTube channel as yet? No money needed. You just need to type in Love 101 FM in your YouTube search, and when you get to our channel, click on the big red subscription button. It's as simple as that. You'll then see a little bell. Click on it. That way, you'll know when we go live. Yup, you will be informed right away. Love 101 FM YouTube channel. All subscriptions are free, so no worries. Do it today and keep connected to love.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. Thanks for staying with us. And before proceeding, I will give you what I will call the official translation to that I quote this morning. What I have here is people do not become upset or agitated, if they are comfortable, it is also difficult for some persons to lobby against issues which do not directly concern them. That is the translation of the I quote in Jamaican language, which is dog no howl, ethim habon. Thanks again, Victor. Thanks so much again. Well, we move right into the first watch, or the main watch. What is it about Jamaica and Jamaicans why our crime rate is so high, first of all? And the Jamaica Constabulary Force's crime statistics has recorded between January and August 2022 alone 968 murders and 767 shootings. It's nauseating just reading that. And that is only what they know about. What about persons who are missing or feared to be dead? And of course, the question is always arising, are we at war? We seem to have a higher crime rate than countries which are in actual declared states of war. So what is the real hindrance to solving our crime problem here in Jamaica? The crime problem. Our guests are for the entire hour today, both the first and second watch. We want to have enough time to go through this in detail. Kevin O'Brien Chang, social and political commentator, and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard, priest, social commentator, and author. And maybe from an ecclesiastical perspective, the priest can give us some hope. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you both?
Hi, morning. How's everything?
Good morning. Good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Yes, good having you both. Two gentlemen who I'm sure can help us to unravel what is going on here. You are both very informed and very aware of what is happening. What is it about Jamaica that has our crime rate so high? I'm going to start with Mr. O'Brien Chang.
Well, Jamaica is not the only place in the world with crime in the world, but we have had the highest murder rate on average for about the last 30 years. Last year and the year before, we had the highest murder rates in the world. If you have read this book called, Savage Violence by Rachel Kleinfeld, and she studied violence in other countries where they had high murder rates and brought them down. Colombia, Sicily, Bihar in India, state in India, and the country of Georgia, right? And let me give you a quote directly from the book, which I think encapsulates the reality of Jamaica. Okay? In Bangladesh, Jamaica, and Nigeria, political parties hire criminal gangs to herd their voters to polls during elections and scare away opposition that protect gangs between campaigns. The main problem, and there's many other contributing factors, but the main problem in Jamaica seems to be political. We developed this culture of garrisons and stuff in the late 60s and 1970s, where you have, violence influenced politics, where you have thugs that influence people to vote for their side or not for the other side. And we have these hardcore garrisons. They have Southeast St. Andrew, South St. Andrew, Tivoli, and East Kingston. These are the main ones. Spanish Town too, where over to 80 to 90% of people vote for one party. And these are all decrepit places. They are undeveloped. Southwest St. Andrew is they get the highest vote every time for one side, the PNP, and they are widely seen as the most undeveloped constituency in the country. And so it's definitely political related. And Ms. Kleinfeld, as I said, if you read the book, she has studied it in other countries, and she sees what happens. The people, they protect the violence producers, right? The security forces are helpless to deal with the real crime. And if you talk to police off the record in Jamaica, they can't say it on the record. They will tell you. They know who the violence producers are. They see, they arrest people. They have 20, 30, 40 repeat offender cases. But what happens? They get calls from higher up, from both sides. This is about a PNP and JLP situation, It is not connected to one side or the other. And that's why they all talk big in opposition. When they come to government, all of a sudden they don't address the issues again. I can't forget Bruce Golding back in 1997 or so when he was with NDM. He called for a walk with Mr. Patterson and Mr. Siaga at the time, JLP and PNP leader. Talked about he had associated with gunmen and we need to solve this problem. He became JLP leader 2007. All that vanished. No more talk about that. And they all act the same way. Both sides know they're guilty. And the worst of it is when you get them in public, these politicians, they claim there's no such thing as garrisons. Garrisons don't exist. The only ones, and everybody can check this on the record, I'm not being prejudiced here, I've Googled it. You Google garrisons and the names of the politicians. The only ones who talk about it, Andrew Holness and Delroy Chuck. Andrew Holness talks about it a lot. He called for a garrison walk in 2011, right? And 2016. But now he's prime minister 6 years straight. What has happened to that garrison walk? And in 2011, he called for the garrison walk. And what was Portia Simpson's similar response at the time? She was the opposition leader. I'm insulted when they talk about garrisons. It's insulting people. Talk about putting your ostrich with your head in the sand. And that is the real issue. 80% of murders take place in garrisons. Until we talk about the political situation, nothing will change in my mind. And in October 2019, at a crime stakeholders forum, whatever, the two opposition leaders, the JLP and PNP, promised that they would publicly disavow any links with gangs and they would walk in violent areas. Nothing has happened. And here's the crux of the matter. Nobody has talked about it. I blame the media tremendously. Obviously, they don't cause the crime in the media, but allowing the situation to continue. Where was the media 2011 with Andrew Holness, the garrison walk called? They were silent. A poll was done. 82% of Jamaicans wanted the walk. Nothing from the media. You look at that to October 2019 call. I have written about it, posted, I wrote an article the other day. Why can't Holness and Golding unite on crime? I don't see anyone talking about it. The media is complicit in the situation. The reality is there. As Ms. Kleinfeld said, I talked about her, I engaged her in email. She said the first step has to be the politicians disavowing links with criminal gangs. They have promised to do it in Jamaica. They have not done it. And until that happens, I don't see the situation improving. The poor police are given a basket to carry water. They're not given full powers. They can only keep the lid on the kettle so it doesn't explode and boil over. But they cannot address the root problem. It is strictly in the politician's lap and the media lap.
Miss Reverend Nemad, we're almost upon a break, but would you like to start making a comment, if any, in relation to the question?
All right. Thanks again for having me. The first observation I'd make is that when you look at crime in Jamaica, especially violent crime, it's really a very interesting study. From the point of view that we are just about 4,411 square miles of territory. And probably climate change has eaten some of that. So probably we don't have so much land now anyway. And about 3 million people. We are hemmed in by the sea. And yet, in a country like that, we can have, to date, 900...
Reverend?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to pause one moment because we are now upon a break.
Okay.
Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back with the Morning Watch.
Expect a coverage for yourself and your family as low as $800 a month. The time by JN Life Vest from JN Life Insurance is...
It is now 7:15 a.m. and you're tuned to Love 101 FM, the family station.
Answers and Simplicity are celebrating Jamaica 60 with up to 60% off. Up to 60% off from Answers Gifts and Home Center, Answers for Children and Simplicity. Now till Saturday, September 3. Answers and Simplicity store-wide sale. Come celebrate 60 with us.
Mommy, is who a ticket?
Hush, child. Me no want them see we.
But mommy, is the census takers?
Me not tell them my business.
But mommy, they need information about all the households to help make decisions about where to put things like clinics, stores, and new roads.
So?
Come, mommy. You count, me count, all our count.
Census Day is September 12th. Look out for the national census takers in your community and let them know you count.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the both first or main and the second, well, not on the second watch yet, but today we will be spending the entire hour on the matter of resolving the crime problem. We have as our guests Kevin O'Brien Chang and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard. And the topic today is the real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica. Just before the break, Reverend Nemard, you were outlining for us that Jamaica is hemmed in by the sea, Caribbean Sea, but you never said Caribbean Sea, but that's what you meant.
Yes.
And it's 3 million of us. Well, it might be 2.7. They're about to do a census. I may have an issue with you on the climate change point, but I will leave that for today. But in a nutshell, you're saying for such a small island, why are we in this state? Continue, Reverend Nemard.
Right, and where can the violence producers go if you're so hemmed in?
Well, you have planes and you have boats.
Yes, I know, but they have to come and land at some point. The killings, the 968 that have been killed so far, were killed on, as far as I know, I can assume, on land. But anyway, the point is that we need to have a very honest conversation with ourselves. To ask ourselves the question, why is it that in a country with, 2.8 million people, of which I believe, and I don't have any investigative study for this, but my own gut feeling and assumption from what I'm looking at, I would hazard the belief that a good 95% of Jamaicans are not violence producers. About 95% of Jamaicans are not engaged in the murder of 968 people so far. 1,400, 1,300, the statistics over the last 10 years giving you over 1,000 people being murdered. It is clear that the large majority of Jamaicans are not doing that. So then you narrow it and you come down to about 5%. Why is it in a sea locked, let me put it that way, country like that we cannot, the 95% cannot deal with, let's say 5% and perhaps 2% of that 5% that are the violence producers in the country? What is wrong that we cannot have an honest conversation with ourselves and to discover why is it that we cannot contain, that small cadre, I would say, of violence producers. Of the 968 that have been killed so far this year, How many of those have been killed by gangsters killing themselves, by scammers killing themselves? Have we disaggregated the situation to see exactly where the killing is coming from? And we say, oh, Jamaica is a violent society. Yes.
So we know there is some domestic violence, yes.
Very few.
Yes.
Very few, probably 10, 15 out of that.
Based on where you're going, Reverend, it raises at least one or two other things.
Mm-hmm.
We are being constantly told that there's a guns for drugs trade between Jamaica and Haiti.
Yes.
And we're also being reminded from time to time that Jamaica is a transshipment point for narcotics from South America to North America.
Exactly.
You have some young men who have high-powered weapons who, no disrespect to any of them per se, but these are some of the young men who will come and beg you money on the road. They want to buy a lunch. They don't have any lunch money.
Or on the construction site.
But, well, wherever. And these are some of the same men who have high-powered weapons that they can use to commit grievous acts, murder and serious shootings.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think any discussion like this can exclude those issues. Then on a kind of psychosocial level, maybe you can help here as well, Reverend. A lot of people just seem to have a very, can I say, violent spirit. They just have all this anger. Any comments on that and on all of what I just said, Reverend?
Right. The first part of it is the territorial integrity of the country. I mean, how do we protect our borders? And I've written in the past that if you take that stretch again, between Clarendon going all the way back to Westmoreland, that sea coast, from Old Harbor, going all the way back to Westmoreland, passing Alligator Pond, Treasure Beach, going across to, I think that is one of the most porous areas for guns coming into the country. And I just say that. I leave the authorities to check that out. But the bottom line is that our territorial borders are not being properly policed. Why? We don't have the resources to send, the boats out there and to really engage.
So we need a stronger Coast Guard then, sir. We need more Marine Police.
Precisely.
Okay.
Precisely.
Okay.
All right. Now for the psychosocial sections, we have ZOSO and we have the social interventions. But I don't know to what extent the social intervention is working. Because you get this impression of a kind of knee-jerk approach. Where you just jump, you go into a community, you clear and you hold and you do a few things. To my mind, cosmetic. That gives the impression that you're really dealing with the problem. But then, how is the money really being spent? And one of the ways in which the government could really ensure, in terms of helping the community to deal with the psychosocial problems that you're talking about is to engage a cadre of social workers, train them, probably young people from the same communities, and deploy them in the community so that they can be buffers to all this conflict that you see happening in the communities.
Remember also, Reverend, that some of these things are happening when the children are in primary school, so they're recruiting young men into gangs at a very early stage.
Right. So if you had these social workers, for example, working in conjunction with the churches, we haven't even touched them yet. The churches are absent in the whole discussion of the community involvement in changing attitudes, in working with families. Because that's where it's all stemming from, And cauterizing the thing from way down there before it explodes into...
And to connect to Mr. Brian Chang's point, a lot of these families are in what are called the same garrison communities. So it comes right back to Mr. Brian Chang's point, I think. Any comments on that, Reverend?
Yes. The only difference I think I'd have with Kevin is the extent to which politics is a factor in driving these crimes. Because I think what has happened over time, yes, there was a time when politics was very entrenched in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I would say. But criminals, no, those influencers in the communities have become more independent of the political directorate. As a matter of fact, they don't even know how to handle them because they have now become more independent, and with independence, they have become more emboldened. So they're not depending so much now on the politics. So the whole idea of thinking that, boy, the politics is driving violence, I don't think it's a factor so much now. We're dealing with criminals who have found a way of really making money through scamming, through the drug trade, and all of these things, and they have moved away from the politicians. So I think we have to be careful how we characterize that at this time. There was a time when it was, but I don't think it is such a factor now.
Heard you loud and clear, Reverend. Heard you loud and clear. Mr. Brian Chang, I believe you are indicating some countries that have been able to cut their high murder rate. How can Jamaica begin to do that, in your opinion, sir?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I find the discussion on crime in Jamaica very myopic and sort of going around in circles. We need to get a broader perspective. What's happening around the rest of the world? A lot of the things we talk about Jamaica, they're present all over the world. Jamaica is not special. We're not unique in the problems we have. In fact, we're better off than many countries in terms of our things, right? But people keep going around in circles and talking about the same thing. We need to talk to people who have seen crime elsewhere and see what has happened, which is why this book, A Savage Order, by Rachel Kleinfeld. The title is, for anybody interested, it's A Savage Order, how the world's deadliest countries can forge a path.
Mr. Brian Chang, A Savage Order?
A Savage Order
by Rachel Kleinfeld.
How the world's deadliest countries can forge a path to security.
Kleinfeld.
Yeah, Kleinfeld. Yeah.
Okay.
A Savage Order. It's available on Amazon. That's where I got my copy, right? And she detailed how places like Colombia, Sicily, the country of Georgia, and the Indian region of Bihar cut murders. Now, the things people talk about in Jamaica, they go on like Jamaica's unique, right? And the political things, right? Let me read from Ms. Kleinfeld. Okay. I believe, I'm not a Jamaica expert, but I believe gangs and political parties still have connections, because in every country I have studied, the problem is not that the violent groups are controlled by political parties. So Dr. Remhard is right, they don't control them. But hear what she says, it's that the parties protect them and provide impunity for non-political crimes.
So they work hand in hand. They don't control the gangs. They sort of work hand in hand then?
They don't control the gangs. But when election time comes, do you honestly think places like Southwest St. Andrews, South St. Andrew, Western Kingston, East Kingston, these places are all terribly run. The people live in poverty, but one party gets 90% of the vote every election, close to it. It is obvious it is not a free vote, right? And as she says, the parties protect them, these gangs, between elections, and so the police can't take them in, and police will tell you. And he said, what happens? Criminal violence increases with impunity, and the gangs kill each other. Yes, it's 70% of murders in Jamaica are gangs, right? And are by gangs. But here, listen to what she says. Politicians gain nothing from the endemic violence, but they can't stop it with arresting their own gang. They're cracking down on violence, right?
Mr. O'Brien Chang.
Hold on, let me get, I'm going to reach a very...
Only because of time, Mr. O'Brien Chang, I'm getting a time signal already as it gets more interesting.
I'm going to read a very critical passage to you.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, though, that what you're reading there, Mr. O'Brien Chang, because I'm getting another time signal. Sir, hold that one, please. Listeners, please stay with us because this is becoming very interesting. Our guests are informing us about quite a number of things. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with the Morning Watch.
Talk to Jane Bank today to find out about achieving your own sweet home in 30 days. A time by Jane Bank Mortgage is...
It is now 7:30 a.m. and you're tuned to Love 101 FM, the family station.
Keep fully connected with Flow Fiber Fast Internet at home and on the road with LTE data and calls for a fast, reliable experience anywhere. Over 500 communities have been upgraded since 2020, making more of Jamaica Flow Fiber Fast. And with Yard and Road, get Flow Fiber Faster Yard and LTE Road for as low as $3,999 plus GCT. Visit discoverflow.co to get connected on Jamaica's largest network. Conditions apply.
Thinking of contracting a cleaner? Contact Bulldog Cleaning Services for office cleaning, commercial cleaning, janitorial services, post-construction cleaning, Airbnb and apartment cleaning, tile strip and restoration. Pest control services are available. Contact us at 876-227-3612. Superb discount to contract customers. Bulldog Cleaning Services, your professional cleaners.
Want a birthday gift? Oreo is celebrating 110 years and giving you the gift. From August 2, buy any 5 Oreo products, expiration no earlier than August 2, and you could unwrap and have a chance to win over $1 million in cash and prizes. You have 3 ways to enter. Upload receipts to OreoPromotions.com, mail entries to Oreo 110 birthday promotion and send to PO Box 2000 CSO, or drop entries along with contact information in boxes at participating stores. Grand draw October 14, 2022. Oreo, stay playful. Authorized under Section 58 of the Printing Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Every day I get bigger, every day I get better. I'm a star in that shimmer. Watch me grow, I'm a winner, yeah. Every step that I take, oh yeah. Feeling great cause I'm learning, yeah. I'm a star in that shimmer. Watch me grow, I'm a winner, yeah. La 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 la. Watch me grow with Alexa Plus.
Help support their mental development at this important stage with a unique combination of nutrients from Lacta Plus. This product is not intended to be a substitute for breast milk.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's take a look now at the news sources to see what Jamaicans and others are saying. And we have here in the Gleaner, 600 teachers not returning to classes in September. 600 teachers not returning to classes in September. We have in the Observer, there'll be no chaos. JUTC says it's ready for new school year. JUTC says it's ready for new school year. We turn to Loop News Jamaica. Lawyer for Donna Lee's cop Bo says Crown going down slippery road. Those and other stories in our various news and media sources. Of course, coming up, we'll be seeking your feedback in relation to our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp question, which is, what is the real hindrance? The real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica. If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
It can go everywhere, from your walls to your floors, from inside to outside. Your style, your choice. At Active Home Center, we have the widest selection of tiles, from classic to unique. Shop our new arrival of tiles for your bathrooms, living rooms, kitchen, and more. Let us help you transform your space. Visit us in Kingston at 84 Constant Spring Road or our newly opened location in Freeport, Montego Bay. Active Home Center, more savings, more choices.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley. Marshall, let us join Victor now to see what our friends on Facebook, WhatsApp, and YouTube have to say in relation to the feedback question. What is the real hindrance to solving a crime problem in Jamaica? Victor?
All right, so we have a couple responses from some of our listeners. This is Kama Irving, and her response is pretty simple. She says Jamaica needs to turn back to God. That is one of the things hindering us from, stymieing this crime issue in the nation. This one here from Faith in Washington Gardens. She says unity and God's leading. Unity is our biggest stumbling block. We lack unity and honesty. Unfortunately, several benefit from crime, so selfishness plays a part. That one from Faith in Washington Gardens. Auntie Pam from Kingston says, even if we have a security post at every gate, and if man doesn't change his heart and begin to love their fellow man, then crime won't stop. That one from Auntie Pam in Kingston. And so these are a few of our responses. These are the ones from WhatsApp. We haven't seen anything on Facebook quite as yet.
Victor, thank you very much. Well, let's continue our discussion on the topic. The real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica. And of course, our guests are Kevin O'Brien Chang, social and political commentator, and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemhard, priest, social commentator, and author. Before we took the break, Mr. O'Brien Chang, you were beginning to outline some very important things from that book you were reading. Please continue, Mr. O'Brien Chang.
Yeah, this is a conversation I had with Ms. Kleinfeld on email, right? This is what she's saying. She's saying privilege violence, like she says, when the politicians, they protect the gang. They say they don't control them.
Mr. O'Brien Chang, forgive me for cutting into what he's saying. She called it privileged violence.
Privilege violence is
My God.
Hold on, is where the politicians protect the violence producers, right? And they say they don't control them. But when between elections, they let them do what they want. When elections come, I need in Southwest St. Andrew, I need in Western Kingston, I need in Spanish Town, I need you in South St. Andrew, right? To get my 89% of the vote, to make sure I win. That's the reality she's talking about. And again, Jamaica's too myopic. This lady has studied other countries. Jamaica wants to pretend, goes on like we are the only country with certain conditions. That is why we need to broaden and look outside. What has worked outside? Well, let me quote from her. This is critical. The final stage of privilege violence is that once impunity levels are high, violence becomes normal within affected communities. Violence in every country is concentrated. In Bogota, Colombia, or Bogota, whatever, 99% of homicide occurs on 1.2% of streets. Violence is also least prosecuted, which is most concentrated. Right? Police are often underfunded and concentrated not where crime is highest, but where the wealthy need protection, tourist areas and business districts. Right? In all countries I researched, police assume violence in high violence areas was mostly directed at other criminals, so investigations are lax. And here's the critical part now. This is what Jamaicans need to listen to and stop making excuses and this and that, social workers. However, once violence is normal and repercussions non-existent, regular people resort to violence far more frequently. This is Ms. Kleinfeld speaking. This could be psychological. I speculate about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even epigenetic changes that lower impulse control in some people raised around violence. Here's critical now. Listen, low level of policing might also lead people to take justice into their own hands. Domestic violence, fights between neighbors, bar fights, all lead to more murders. So once violence is entrenched, as it is in Jamaica, the professional criminals may make up a majority, but they're hardly the only cause. And a significant plurality, much higher than in other countries, drags the tail of regular violence. She says, once violence becomes entrenched, Jamaicans wonder, when arguments lead to murder, a brother argued, a brother kill them, man kill woman out sometimes to stab up the man. We have to understand it is, according to her study, it is linked to the wider normalization of violence, right? So a lot of the things in Jamaica we think are unique here or something, they're not. She studied many other countries, and I've encouraged the PSOJ and all that people I know. We need to bring down people like this Kleinfeld and maybe others, to speak here. So we get away from the politics. The JLP and PNP keep blaming each other, right? And then we start to focus on minor things. Okay, the social worker and all that. She said that doesn't work. The social workers, they're just dealing with the symptoms. You have to deal with the main problem, lower your overall violence levels. Otherwise, all that is wasted money. We are dealing with symptoms and not the main cause. And as I say, I'm not saying she's completely right. I don't think her is gospel. But we need to bring people like this into the conversation and stop going around in circles. And the PNP and GNP keep blaming each other. It's far beyond a party situation. It's been going on for 30 years now, right? We need to get out of our circular discussions and bring in people outside who have other countries dealt with the situation. And she come back to the same point. The violence producers are protected, and she calls it privilege violence. And that spreads like a disease across the community. So we have brothers killing brothers over simple arguments.
Reverend Nemard, do you have any comments in relation to the term that has been coined, privileged violence?
Only insofar as as Kevin said, that these thugs and enforcers in the community are protected by the politicians, and that is where they get that kind of privilege and think that they have a kind of legitimacy to do what they're doing. Because
police.
I mean, the enforcers in the community who are protected according to Ms. Kleinfeld's definition of that privileged violence. And if they're protected to that extent, then they're going to be called upon at some point, or a blind eye will be turned, to their activities, because the political directorate wants them to be part of their, passage to power. I can understand that. But when we talk about the community involvement, because that is where it's at, just like they say, all politics is local, all violence inevitably becomes local.
You see the concern that I think some persons may have. I'm not going to speak for Mr. Brian Chang, but I think the concern some persons may have, Reverend Nemard, is that you can bring in the social workers and they might do a perfectly good job, but they are not really reaching the persons who are producing the violence. They might be reaching the violence producer's brother. You might be reaching the violence producer's baby mother or wife. You might be reaching the violence producer's grandson or son, but you're not reaching the violence producer himself or even herself.
But okay, even in a transient way, if they're reaching the relatives somehow, can it be translated that at some point they may be intersected with? But the main point about the social...
You know why I even raised that? It is said anecdotally. Maybe you can comment on this, Reverend Nemard, because you are a priest. It is said that persons who commit violent crime, they will insist that their children go to Sunday school or go to church. So the fact that they are allowing their family members to interface with, for instance, church or social worker, as the case may be, does it necessarily mean that they themselves are changing, or are they just sort of winking an eye at and going along with these measures, intervention measures, sir?
Yes, but when I talk about intervention, though, I'm not just talking about social worker just being there and they're talking about a few things to committee members and so on. I'm talking about a kind of collaborative effort between government and the communities. And social work is just probably one aspect of this, because you need to have them inside there. But there seems to be a disconnect between the what I call the communities themselves, these depressed communities that Kevin talks about and that we all know of, especially in the inner cities. And a disconnect between those communities and the government itself. And it is this kind of
Reverend Nemard, sir. Only because of time, we are already upon another break. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
I'm Pastor Courtney Morrison, co-host of the Mailbox on the family station, Love 101. Men, we are leaders, providers, and protectors. Let's continue to lead, provide, and protect the vulnerable of our nation, generating peace and prosperity to Jamaica land we love. Men, we got this. Monday, let's reignite the love.
Do you operate a business in the manufacturing or agro-processing industry? Sagicor Bank has a loan just for you. Sagicor Bank Manufacturing and Agro-Processing Loan. Borrow up to $50 million with up to 12 years to repay. Financing you can use to retool, expand, improve efficiencies, or gear up for export. Speak with a business banker today. Sagicor Bank Manufacturing and Agro-Processing Loan. Just another way Sagicor Bank is taking care of business. Conditions apply.
It's independence once again, and that means celebration. And Berger's big Independence Day sale. Get 10% off Berger Everglow, 303, 404, Royale, Weatherproof, and more. Don't miss out on Berger's big savings in every drop. Look at your nearest hardware or the color shop now. Happy 60th Independence, Jamaica. Berger, for lasting beauty and protection.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the second watch, but we have been discussing this particular topic since the first watch. We are dedicating the entire hour today to the topic of what is a real hindrance to solving the crime problem in Jamaica. And our guests are Kevin O'Brien Chang, social and political commentator, and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard, priest, social commentator, and author. Reverend Nemard, before the break, you're making a point. Would you like to complete the thought, sir? The thought for us, sir?
All right. The thought I was making it there is that when you talk about social intervention, it has to be something that is sustained. It cannot be a knee-jerk. You go inside a community, you clear and you hold. But is the effort to really deal with the needs of the community sustained? How much capital are you prepared to give towards the effort? I mean, sometimes ago, the Minister of National Security was bemoaning the amount of social spend, and they see no result from this, the amount, billions of dollars that have been spent over time to deal with these issues. Accountability, making sure that there is that sustained presence. And that's why I talk about social workers. But what I'm talking about are people who can be on the ground working with the community organizations, the churches, and so on, and coming up with ways in which they can engage the people and let them feel that they have a sense of belonging in the country.
A quick question, though, Reverend Nemard.
Yes.
Suppose we do all of that and it works, but the limb that Mr. O'Brien Chang has indicated exists, supported by the thoughts of Rachel Kleinfeld in that book. If those things remain, so there is still the possibility of this privileged violence continuing thereafter. Well, because the political element hasn't gone, it's still there.
That has to be addressed. And
how, Reverend, how?
Well,
you say that is it. How?
Yes, but you see, fighting crime at that level has to be a collaborative effort between the governed
In other words,
and
you
the
have a
governor.
government in power.
And we have to insist. We have to insist on the politicians that they break that nexus between themselves and that privileged minority that are enforcing that violence in the communities. That has to be worked on. It has to be worked on politically because it's a political problem.
Insisting is one thing, but what will actually make it be broken? Mr. Brian Chang, any comments?
Well, it was for us to put the pressure on them. I'll come back to this, okay? They had an October 2019 stakeholder summit on crime, and this is POJ report. Both the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition agreed to publicly repudiate any connection between politics and gang violence and would work together in violence-affected communities. This is 2 years ago. More than 2.5 years ago. Better on to 3 years. Why is the media not pushing the two parties? This is where, we all can play a part. We know the crux of the problem. The parties have promised to do it. Where the Gleaner editorials, the Observer editorials, the Nationwide, the TVJ, the CDM,
so stick up in, Mr.
RJR. Why?
Stick up in. What exactly you would want us, the media, to do?
Fulfill the promise.
Feel free.
The promise to do it.
What you want to say.
The Prime Minister and leader of opposition agreed to publicly repudiate any connection between politics and gang violence and would work together in violence-affected communities. All we're asking the politicians to do is do what you said you would do. Look at the recent emancipation celebration. We're wonderful. And we see Mark Golding and Owen shaking hand and letting go peace dove. No, why did nobody ask? Hold on, you guys are letting go peace dove. What about what you promised to do? Why aren't you doing it? Where are the voices every day, the front pages? Meet Mr. Holness and Mr. Golding. Do what you promised to do. You said you're going to cut your ties with gangs. You're going to walk in the violent areas. How tough is it for us to ask for that? Why? Where do you hear do you hear the voices calling for that? And that is the crux of the problem.
I'm making a
note. The problem, we know what the problem is, and we're talking about all the peripheral stuff like social work and all that. That cannot work. As Horace Chang rightly said, the money has been wasted, but he's part of the problem. It's wasted because the links continue, the privilege, violence continues. Until you do that, nothing else is going to change anything. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, that's what Jamaica is doing. We're doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, but we're not trying to pin down the politicians. And then what happens? The PNP people take sides and the jail people take sides as if it's only one party is the problem, right? Defending their party. We need the people. We need to say, politicians, fulfill your promises, and nothing is going to change until the politicians fulfill that promise to repudiate the links between the gangs and start walking in the violence areas. Because as I say, you have to start somewhere symbolic, but you got to start somewhere. And there's where I leave it. Until we see the politicians do what they said they would do, not going to change. And the voices are not out there pressuring them.
And apart from the media, any other voices should be pressuring them apart from the media?
Church, the PSOJ, the churches, all those pressure. The church, the PSOJ, all the unions, they have other voices.
All of them.
Yeah, we start with the media. The media is what is you start, and the media can get a traction of a snowball rolling down the hill. But if the media is silent, not going to who going to talk about it? The media leads discussions in the country now.
I see.
But let me just say this, Stokeley, that I hope we don't have any more of these talk fests between the among the politicians at Vale Royal, because they are just cosmetic. They give the impression that they're addressing the problem, but all that they do is meet together and talk. We don't want that. It like Kevin is
walk the talk.
Yeah,
they must walk the talk.
It's very easy for Golding to sit down with Honis at Jamaica House for a breakfast and we talk over things. We don't need a big talk fest that gives some kind of cosmetic impression that we're dealing with the problem and the problems are out there. Yeah. And yes, civil society has to put pressure on the politicians to really engage those bigs in the society that are fomenting the violence, because we're not even talking about those yet, you know. Those Mr. Bigs that are the nerve center of the of a great deal of the violence. They're not firing the guns themselves, but they are out there fomenting and strategizing.
So Mr. Biggs are on the whole is a mark going right now.
Right.
The two Mr. Biggs have promised to do something and they have not doing it. Why talk again? You've made the promise, you have talked the talk. We have to force them to walk the walk.
You know,
nobody's pressuring them.
There is something I want to raise with both of you before we wrap this morning. There seems to, and it's based on something I heard someone say once when he gave a talk at a particular venue. It was indicated that there seems to be an unwritten rule where some of the persons who commit these violent crimes, it's almost as if they've gotten a memo, and the memo says, confine the violence to certain areas, do not take it to certain uptown, so to speak, locations. So all of these heinous, gruesome murders, confine the majority of them to the garrison communities or communities that are more financially deprived or depressed. Any comments on that, gentlemen? Starting with you, Mr. O'Brien.
When Ms. Kleinfeld said it, she said every country is concentrated. 99% of murders in Bogota take place at 1.2% of the streets. Why Jamaicans keep going over the same thing, pretending that Jamaica is different from other countries? This is the problem. Very myopic. It's a reality, yes, but it's not unique. And that's a problem with Jamaica. We need to look at that bigger picture, what has happened in other countries. We keep talking like our situation is unique. It is not.
Indeed. Reverend Nemard, any further comments you want to make?
Yeah, today it certainly is not unique. And again, I say that if there is any kind of silver lining in the whole thing, it's that the vast majority of the Jamaican people are law-abiding citizens just wanting to get on with their lives. But they must become engaged in dealing with what I say the 5% that are out there producing the violence, including the Mr. Bigs. People must become more engaged to get the thing behind us. Just throwing, money at something, or calling for the commissioner to resign or the minister to resign won't work. That's nonsense.
I think
That's
those
nonsense.
I'm not put it this way, that can't be the only answer. So I think
Stokeley, you need to get a representative of the PNP and the GLP, read that PSOJ thing to them and ask them what is happening. We need to pressure the political parties. That is the basic problem right now. They have promised to do, we know what needs to be done, they've promised to do it, but they're not doing it. That is the crux of the problem right now. Until they do that, not going to change. We're a democracy. Why can't we force them to do what they promised to do?
We talk about engagement, but the average citizen might not feel empowered to engage. But I think what you're both saying is that civil society, with the strong support of the media, need to be the ones who drive this. Is that what you're both saying in a nutshell?
Our civil society is a disgrace.
And especially
publicly.
And especially
NIA, JFJ, JAMP, they are utter disgraces. They are very political. They don't talk about, has any of them talked about this promise made by the politicians and asked them to do it? None of them. They are well aware of it. None of them have opened their mouths on it. If we wait for them, we'll wait forever. The media has to push it. I'm going to say it straight to you.
I won't comment on that last
one. After the media push. These three groups, they have well known about this, the promise that was made. And none of them has opened their mouths and said, Golding and holiness, go on. That's why I've given up on civil society. My only hope is the media, that the media, they're the freest 12 freest in the world. And the ball is in the media court right now, as far as I'm concerned.
We will have to leave it there for today. We will have to leave it there. But I want to thank you both, gentlemen, for having been with us. Very important discussion. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Nemard and Mr. O'Brien Chang. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we look at other topical and controversial issues. Visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and all other Love 101 FM programs. And of course, listen to the Morning Watch on our Love 101 app and download it today and stay connected to the family station, Love 101 FM, the #1 gospel station in Jamaica. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall, handing it back to the Love in the Morning with Victor Brown.